So, the very first thing we're going to talk about in part two, individual habits, is getting things done. But let's see what the introduction is. So, it says great companies are made up of great individual performers who work well together as a team. As CEO, you are both the architect of the culture and the central hub in the wheel of information that flow in the wheel of information flow that enables the team to function effectively. Your example inspires your team, and your efficiency determines the efficiency of the team. Therefore, the first thing to optimize is yourself. Let's highlight this one. So, the first thing to optimize is yourself. And now we're just getting into the mindset, the meaty stuff of the book. The first thing to optimize is yourself. If you want to build a great company, have a great team, you've got to optimize yourself. And that's why CEOs who are very effective use um, people like executive assistants, virtual assistants, and then chiefs of staff, chief of staffs. Um, and the entire concept behind it is to make sure that the CEO is absolutely effective. That is, your own processes are completely optimized. And then it says it right here. The first thing to do is to optimize yourself. And I'm also saying this introspectively because as someone who works in operation and who is looking forward to having more contracts or to having a long-term work experience with a global company in operations, it's important for me to optimize myself. And so this mindset is important if you're going to function effectively in executive support and executive operations. So it then says, I found the following habits and methods to be the most effective for fostering individual productivity. So, chapter 3, getting things done. Everyone needs an organizational system to track goals, priorities, and tasks. Three things are important here: goals, priorities, and tasks. And that's not to say that they're completely different things because your goal informs your task. And to actualize or to get your task done, you have to prioritize because resources are hardly ever enough. If you're in a situation where all your resources are more than enough, then there's something um, wrong. Maybe you have too much of it, and then you should be sharing it. But the point of being efficient is that you're working with lean resources and you're doing the absolute best of making the best um, out of the resources that you have. So prioritization is key. The majority of successful CEOs that I know, this is Mochary speaking, use the system outlined in the book, Getting Things Done: The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. Great. This is another book that we ought to read. If we're reading this book, we ought to read this one too. Getting things done. And that's I see now that's where he got the title for this chapter from. While the book is dense, it is definitely worth reading in its entirety. The essence of Allen's system is this: each day, process every single item in your inbox, defined broadly as all inboxes, email, Slack, text, and all to dos. If the action takes less than 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately. Now we have to highlight this one. If it takes less than 2 minutes, let's just change the text. If it takes less than 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately. If not, then write down what the required action is and place it on one of the following lists. first list is next actions. These are the next tasks on your priority list separated into areas of context. You have computer actions where you need access to your computer. You have calls, phone calls that can be completed when you don't have access to a computer, e.g., riding in a car. Outside, actions that can only be completed outside, such as errands, and home, actions that can only be completed at home. So the 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 idea behind this list, because usually when you have like next actions, um, you can have them sorted out using a different mental model. But the mental model he uses here is a location slash tool based model. So your computer is your tool, but then your computer is usually somewhere, most likely in your office. Of course, if you're the kind who carries your laptop and you move things about a lot, your computer could be with you even in your bed. But usually the computer is a tool. So this action, your next actions can then be based on your tool or your location. Calls, that's also your phone, or in your car when you're riding out. And then outside, that is your maybe going to the next place you're going home. So and then home. So all the mental model behind this next action is based on where you are and what tools you have at the point where you want to get something done. There are other mental models like for next action point, you look at what the impact on revenue is and so on and so forth. I think we're going to get to that point in this book. But for next action, it just says look at computer things that require you to have your laptop, calls, phones, outside when you're maybe taking a walk, and when you're at home. The point here is that tasks should be written as single actions as opposed to broad goals. This context is very important. The key is to not have to think about what needs to be done again once the next action has been written down. So you want to write it in such a clear way that it does not require explanation. That is the point of writing next action down. So next action down could be call the CEO of levels. Call is also a broad term. So it would be like discuss um, the next idea with co-founder. Yeah, so that's a little more clear. And you could even make it a little clearer. You could say discuss the launch date for our new app with co-founder. That's way better in terms of clarity because there is no need to explain. And that's what he means by it should be so clear that it is not a, a task that requires explanation. It has very uh, little compared to the broad goals. So it's just a single action. That's how we want to write our next tasks. Then it says the next action should be written so clearly that all you need to do is follow its direction when you read it next. So in when you have your computer, for example, you could have write first draft of 10-year company vision and 3-month roadmap. Write first draft of sales playbook. You have calls, call John dash call Mary to review draft financing docs, paragraph by paragraph. Outside, Walgreens pick up prescription, and home clean out garage. So number two, you have first of we have next action. Second, we have waiting for. So waiting for this is the list of things that you have asked others to do and are waiting for them to complete. And you see this list we have here is it's roughly the same kind of list that we have when we're doing inbox zero. We have next action. That is somebody has maybe written you an email and they're requiring information and you do not have the time to do it. So you're just going to label it as action or next action. And so that means that's something you're going to put you on your prioritization for that day, for maybe the next day. And you have waiting for. Maybe you've been contacted and asked to review a doc by your CEO, and then you've done the document review, but then you need input from a member of the team. So to complete that review, you write to the member of your team and you say, "Hi, James. Following up on what we talked our discussion yesterday, please send me your perspective on the solutions that we should be trying out next week." And once you send that message like that, because you're still waiting for James, you're going to classify it as waiting for. So these are the same methods that we use in Inbox Zero, roughly. I think it's not going to change. So the point is that you want to work in such a way that all of your tasks, you know what is next, you know what you're waiting for, and you're labeling them in such a fashion. So you then says list the person to whom you have delegated the requested action and the date on which you made the request. You can then easily scan your waiting for list and see which aging requests are still outstanding. Move these agent requests to your next action list and ask the person again for the item. So if something has been waiting in, or as if something has been in waiting for quite a while, it says here that you want to move that thing into the next action list and then ask the person again. Sometimes you're waiting for someone to revert on something, and maybe they are also trying to figure out or confirm one or two things, and they don't want to provide you with inaccurate information. So they may not get back to you immediately. So what you want to do is to move that item into the next action so that you know that it's pending, and that has progressed from just being something you're waiting on to something that is about to be done. The perspective is that everything you're doing is driving towards action. And I think a philosophy that is behind this kind of culture is that for efficient people, or for people who usually succeed the most, like successful CEOs, I think they are usually good at taking immediate action on things, because there's something that I'm trying to learn, very like to master, and that is the space between when I have an idea and my execution. I want to increase that space so rapidly. Like if I have an idea by morning in the morning, by night I should have executed on that idea. So that's the kind of work culture, that's the kind of speed you want to have. The difference between the moment when you conceive of an idea and the moment when you perform that idea shouldn't be so broad. It shouldn't be like a month necessarily. It shouldn't be like a year. You have to be moving in like 24-hour time capsules. And it, sometimes you think I will say, oh, but that also means that you're not going to have all the information and you may not be accurate. You wouldn't get things done well and so on and so forth. Yes, but the person who gets something done today, I have a quote like that um, in my on my website. One of the quotes I wrote this month is that you want to get something done today. You don't want to procrastinate things. You want to move quickly, because if you move quickly, the person who has made a move today has 24-hour advantage over the person who is waiting to make that same move, a similar move tomorrow. So that's the kind of mindset you want to have. It's not always going to be perfect, but the point is not perfection. Successful CEOs like do not wait for things to be perfect, to have all the information they need. They're always moving. And whenever they move, they make a mistake, they correct it immediately. They are like fixers. They know how to fix things. So that's the kind of place we want to get to mentally. And then waiting for, it says, for example, Sarah, feedback on sales playbook. Pages 3 to 18. Jim, write up issue for next leadership team meeting, pages 3 to 19. Those are just examples. And then the other label is After next action, waiting for, you now have someday slash maybe. So this one is mid level, and this is something you do not like. Anything that falls into someday or maybe is not urgent and is um, important, moderately important. Because usually when something is like ultra important, very, very important, there's an urgency that follows it. But this one seems to be like somewhere in the middle, but certainly is not urgent. That's why it is someday or maybe. So anything that's someday or maybe means it does not necessarily have to fall into your 24-hour day capsule or 24-hour time capsule. So this is the list of things that you one day want to do, but don't need to get done now. E.g., read a book. So right now, I'm following this mindset. My my thought is to read this book, to finish it as soon as possible, and then to just sit in front of the camera and then talk about this book. And maybe someday one person is going to watch it. Um, but I've seen other books that is recommended. In fact, in chapter one, when we started, he said, if you haven't read this book, um, or if you haven't made market fit, have a product market fit of a $1 million ARR, that is annual recurring revenue, then you should go read that book. I would have gone to read that book and then start reading that book, and then I'll notice I need to read another book, and then I'll just keep jumping that way. But right now, my focus is on finishing the series, and then I'm going to go back and read all the other books that is recommended, or just continue that way. So if you make progress, you can use that momentum to make another point of progression. So anything that is a maybe is something that you can put off to another day or delegate to somebody else. And then number 4, it says agenda. Inefficient leaders waste a lot of time reaching out about or responding to one-off issues in real time. A much more efficient method is to batch your issues and discuss them all at once. This does not apply for urgent issues. Okay, so what the idea? The idea is batch meetings. So like group meetings. So instead of doing one-on-one and then you talk about this thing and then you have another one-on-one, you talk about a similar issue, then just batch them together and go straight, okay? Or bring everybody into the room and then have a group call. And what's going to happen is because there are similar issues, yes, but because they are individual, that is, they are independent, or maybe they come from like different people, you can then make an agenda. It says those need to be addressed immediately. Urgent things need to be addressed immediately. But by addressing many issues on a regular basis, some urgent issues will disappear. To do this, create and use an agenda list. Okay, this is your list of regular meetings. When you think of something that you want to discuss with someone with whom you meet regularly, write it down on your agenda list. Then, when you meet with that person, check your agenda list and review everything accumulated there. So, have an agenda list with people that you meet with regularly so that you can always trash out things that you've noticed, that you've observed. It's a much more effective way to discuss or rub minds with people and be on the same page and things, especially with people whom you have a regular need to meet with. Okay, so for example, it gives spouse, what should we do for our winter holiday? Same thing with the spouse, you're thinking of, oh, connect, listen to each other's day for 10 minutes each. And leadership team, are we having enough fun? 10-year company vision, 3 months company roadmap. Whenever you have ideas and you notice things you want to think about or to talk about, you put them in your agenda list. And then when you meet with this person, you use your agenda list to talk about it. So we've talked about next action. We've talked about waiting for Sunday slash maybe the agenda list. And now we're going into projects. So instead of projects, this list is for projects that have more than one next action that can only be done one after the other. So the difference between project management and product management, one of the differences is that for a project is a one-time thing. Once is like you're taking a thing from initiation to completion, and then that project is closed. But in product management, it's not necessarily like that. It goes beyond completion. But the concept of completion in project management is weak because what you have is iteration. I mean, look at WhatsApp, for example. WhatsApp has never been complete at any given time. Facebook has never been complete. There's always development and iteration in the product that you use. So those are just like I'm using a product example, but the point about the project he says here is this list is for projects that have more than one action that can only be done one after the other. That is serially. So maybe one thing leads to another thing. Yeah. And what is this about? This is maybe like I think the mindset he has here is about traditional project approach to project management because it says it's this one is done and then it moves to the other thing. Right? But in Agile, we're talking about getting things done simultaneously. Build, test, build, test, and continue that way until the project is complete. And you're like building several things at the same time. So write out all the next actions required to get to completion. Then simply add them chronologically. Yeah, the keyword here is chronologically. That is from A to Z. That's what it means because one thing leads to the other. Then review. Review is the sixth item. So we've talked about next action. We've talked about waiting for. We've talked about Sunday slash maybe. We've talked about agenda list. Then we've talked about projects now. Review. So this is your cadence for reviewing the lists above. So remember we talked about two lists here. List within a project and then list within the agenda. The difference between the agenda here and the project here is that the project is about tasks, next actions, but agenda is around conversations and things that you need to talk about. Look at the examples he also gives. These are conversational items. So that's the difference between the agenda list and the project list. So review, it then says this is your cadence for reviewing the list above. So you have daily lists, you have weekly lists. So in daily, you're looking at next action and then waiting for. In weekly, you're looking at Sunday slash maybe agenda and projects. And then it says, and finally, use your calendar to schedule next actions that need to happen on a certain day or at a certain time. I recommend that you actually put your reviews, that is number 6, above in your calendar. So you have to find a way around putting reviews in our calendar. We can maybe batch have a certain spot. And I think there's somewhere in this book where it talks about 2 hours, using 2 hours every morning to just focus on their top goals. Yeah, I think we'll get to that point in top goals. So the next thing here, so we've talked about our next actions, we've talked about waiting for, we've talked about Sunday slash maybe, we've talked about agenda lists, we've talked about projects list, and then we've talked about reviews. And now the last last item in getting things done is goals. Goals, goals, goals. This is not part of Alan's GTD, but I use it and find it very helpful. Later in the book, I recommend that you create for your company a 10-year vision and quarterly OKRs, as well as department, team, and individual quarterly OKRs. I keep a copy of this vision and these OKRs on the goals list. I refer to it regularly to flesh out my next action list. Then tools. So goals. What are goals about? Goals are the big picture things that we want to achieve. And because we have this big picture things we want to achieve, we want to be clear about it in a 10-year vision board or have them broken down into quarterly OKRs so that each department can move together towards the 10-year goals. So the OKRs are objectives, key points, and Okay, I think I've missed it up, but it's somewhere along. Let me check. Let's just check for the meaning of OKRs here. I need to remind myself. So objectives and key results. Yeah, I missed that. So good. That's a refresher. I keep a copy of this vision and these OKRs on the goals list. I refer to it regularly to flesh out my next action list. Then tools. There are many tools that will help you maintain a GTD system, from the simple Evernote to the potent OmniFocus. I know of Evernote, but I don't know OmniFocus, so I'm going to check OmniFocus out later. Let's um, highlight it here. Okay. Choose one that fits your level of willingness to learn new functionality. I think Evernote is much more common than OmniFocus. So maybe I'll go back and do a refresher on Evernote. But that's it on chapter 3. So yes, we're going to stop the video on chapter 3 here.